When you dismiss the framers of the Constitution as slaveholders or having wooden teeth or whatever, you're no better than the radicals who've spent over a century destroying this republic. Because you are ignorantly rejecting the heart of this republic. It is those men who gave us a constitution that sought to prevent what is happening to our country today, the details of which I assure you I'm going to get into. And it is important that we understand that the world didn't start today. The nation didn't start today, that there is much useful wisdom we can learn from those who've come before us and have confronted tyranny. When we say the president is violating the Constitution, that means something to us. But to those who don't care about the Constitution, it means nothing. You've heard people talk about separation of power. Oh, don't worry, we're going to play the audio of Obama. This show handles things differently. We don't just play clips and rant on and on and on. I want to get into this. Separation of powers. This is the key to small r republicanism. The framers of the Constitution insisted on it. And when they developed the constitutions in the states, they insisted on it. The greatest fear they had was the concentration of power from their own experience with the monarchy in England, from their own knowledge of history, from the philosophers they embraced, like Charles de Montesquieu, the most prominent to talk about three branches of government. They borrowed it from him. When you look at Madison's notes, I should say when I do, because none of the other hosts do. When you look at Madison's notes, there was much debate about what the executive branch would look like. Should there be two so-called presidents? Should there be a president whose decisions are checked by a judicial council? Should the president have to have his decisions balanced with a Senate? And they had very tense discussions about this. They said, no, none of that can work. One president. However, we're going to check his powers. He will not have the power of the purse. He will not have the power to go to war, and we can get into that one day too, without declarations of war. With certain exceptions, but that for another day. The power of the president to veto will exist, but Congress ultimately will have the power to override a presidential veto. James Madison and John Jay in the Federalist Papers, less so Hamilton, but he had a minority view, felt that the legislative branch, Congress, while we talk about co-equal branches, in the end, would have the broadest amount of authority. And when you read the Constitution, it does. It does. The courts have the least amount of authority. In fact, other than the Supreme Court, they're creations of Congress. But folks, particularly since Franklin Roosevelt, and people can date it before then, but the modern presidency has been completely changed, and in so many ways is unhinged from our constitutional order. It is. This concentration of power is something that the left is constantly fighting for. That's why Washington, D.C. is so powerful, rather than state capitals. And when you have an increasingly desperate and angry president of the United States, this becomes incredibly dangerous to what remains of the republic. It's amazing. Is there a single Democrat in Congress, just one in either house, who's dared to speak out against this tyranny that's going on? And by the way, I want to welcome the other hosts to finally recognizing that's what's going on. Is there one? The answer is no, not one. Is there a single nightly network news program, ABC, NBC, or CBS, that takes any time whatsoever to inform their viewers about what's happening in this country under this president? No, not one. Is there an editorial page in any of the old, big city newspapers, from the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost to the L.A. Slimes and all the rest, is there one of the old, big newspaper editorial pages warning the American people of the coming storm? Not one. I'm not talking about the prominently conservative papers. You know what I'm talking about. Not one. How about the Associated Press? No. How about Reuters? No. These are perilous times, I tell you. They are perilous times. I want you to listen to your president. I want you to listen to a man who as brazenly as the late Hugo Chavez, the Castro brothers, Mugabe, Putin, any of them, is telling you exactly who he is and exactly what he intends to do, which he's been doing all along. And I want you to believe him when he says it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we've replaced the Declaration of Independence with the Communist Manifesto. Read it. Not in every respect, but the guts of it. And we replaced the Bill of Rights and the Constitution with the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, which I will mention in a moment. But this president intends, wherever he can, whenever he can, to abuse his power. If he can get away with it, he knows Congress is a dead letter. Congress can do nothing and will do nothing. You want to know why? Because when your Republican leaders announced to the world that they will not shut down the government, they did more than announce that they won't shut down the government. They announced that they're such cowards and they're so timid, there's not a damn thing they're going to use in the Constitution's arsenal to stop this president. Nothing. Zero. They're not upholding their oath of office either. Not a single member of Congress who refuses to step forward and challenge the lawlessness of this president is upholding his or her oath of office, because they have a duty to defend the Constitution every bit as much as the President of the United States or any member of any court. And they won't do it. And the media in this country. What's the point? What is the point of having a First Amendment with respect to the press in this country if it's more or less a propaganda mill? If it's more or less, as I've been calling it for years, the Praetorian Guard for the president and big government? What's the point? It might as well be more honestly referred to as the government media. I've got an article in front of me here. 22 individuals who previously served in the media have served or are serving in the Obama administration. They are anxious to join this administration officially, but many of them have joined it unofficially, where they pretend to be journalists. They pretend to be journalists where they advance the cause of this president and his agenda. What's the point of the First Amendment if this is the way they're going to behave? Here's Obama today before a cabinet meeting. Some of you have heard this, some of you have not. But everybody needs to hear it. That's the point. Cut one, go.
One of the things that I'll be emphasizing in this meeting is the fact that we are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help that they need. I've got a pen and I've got a phone. And I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward.
He's just announced that he is going to assume lawmaking powers. He's just announced that he is going to assume lawmaking powers. He does not recognize the majority in the House of Representatives. I don't know how much more clearly he can say it. You know what this is, folks? You know what this is? This is a gradual, quiet coup. That's what's taking place.